progress.
I wanted to start off by saying congratulations on such a fantastic film. I had the chance to see it on the big screen here, and it is an amazing film, so congratulations.
Thank you so much, Dave. Cheers.
So tell us a little bit about how you became involved with this project in the first place.
I became involved because I wrote another thing that's a completely different script called The Eel. It's a neo-noir western, so very non-Gucci. And I wrote it, and Ridley's company was producing it. And the producer on that movie showed Ridley that script as a sample of my writing. And Ridley and his wife invited me in to talk about House of Gucci, which at the time was just called Untitled Gucci Project. And so, yeah, we just kind of started to talk about it, and they'd been trying for many, many years with different writers, very, 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 very good writers, a lot of Oscar winners, and the scripts never landed for Ridley. And I don't think he was even attached to most of them. I think he kind of just ended up doing other things. But when I wrote the script and he read it, it was really very soon after that we got going on developing it and casting it and everything, because obviously he's such a legend and he's such a powerhouse. He can get movies made much quicker than most people.
Was that kind of terrifying for you that other writers had a go at writing this script and it had never really landed? Like, did that make it even more nervous for you that now you were trying to achieve something that other writers hadn't been able to achieve?
Honestly, Dave, now that you ask like that, yes. But at the time, I was so naive about it, and I just thought, A, they're paying me a little bit of money, so that's good. So I have to actually do something, like I have to produce something now. And B, it was really it was a question of letting go, knowing that there's all these other versions out there that didn't get made. And so the choice is, I could really be free with it. I could make really strong choices. I could lean into my dark humor, and I could do things that felt very kind of modern and rather than sort of biopic-y. And so the fact that I wrote it in that bubble, that I never thought Ridley Scott was going to direct it, that I never thought Al Pacino and Lady Gaga and all these people were going to act in it, I think that really helped me, because I just did my own thing on my own, really,
Yeah. So you grew up in Milan. Did you know much about the Gucci story at all before you tackled this?
I did, because my mother's a fashion designer, and I grew up very close to where Maurizio was murdered. And it was such a big story when it happened in 1995, when the murder happened. So it was something that I knew about and I'd read about over the years. And I just remember reading about all the different news reports about the film. Every time a new actor came on board or a new director, I just remember reading about it and thinking, that it would be a dream project. And I just had to wait a very long time to get going on it. But it was always in the back of my mind in some shape or form.
So tell us a little bit about the research that you would have to have done for this film. How much research did you have to do to make sure that you were true to the story and true to the characters that you were writing about?
The research project was really, I would say it was sort of like, half of it was research and then half of it was the writing of the screenplay. But the research was really just me spending 3 months reading everything I could, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just diving in and, reading the Sergei Fordin book many, many times, reading a lot of articles of the 70s and 80s about the family, and just kind of getting accustomed with that world, which was kind of the world that I grew up in, but, not to that level of wealth.
Yeah.
But just kind of understanding some of the ways in which people operated and the manipulations and obviously the legalities and the business stuff, which is pretty complex. And then after the research period, 3 months of that, and then after that, I just wrote the script with all that knowledge, but but the knowledge was kind of in the back of my mind. I didn't really keep, like I wasn't like going through all the research, going, okay, I've got to put this in, got to put that in. It was really more a question of letting the creativity take its own course,
Yeah. Do you watch footage of the different people involved to pick up on the way they speak or anything like that, or do you let creativity kind of dictate that for you?
I watched a lot of documentaries. There was a whole bunch of documentaries on YouTube. Some of them were actually very good. There was some interviews with Patrizia. There was interviews with even Maurizio, actually. As far as the speech patterns go, it's funny because I wrote the screenplay in English, and I didn't want to try and mimic Italians speaking English. I just wanted, because I wanted the dialogue to feel fresh and fun, and so I just wrote it for English speakers, really. Yeah. And then once we got on set, that was Ridley's choice that he made, and that was a whole chapter that really I wasn't involved in. But the most important thing for me was just to make sure that the characters, like Paolo, for example, giving Paolo a voice in English, regardless of where he was from.
Yep. For young screenwriters that might be listening to this, what was the biggest difference you noticed working on nonfiction and then fiction? What was the biggest difference you noticed when you had to sit down and write this script compared to something that you have written from absolute scratch on characters that don't exist?
That's a great question. I don't know about other people, but I always do research, no matter whether it's an original screenplay or a nonfiction screenplay. Unless I end up writing about, my daily life, which I don't think would make for a very interesting movie, I'm always going to have to do some sort of research. So I feel like that process is almost identical in both cases. The only thing that is different, and it's a pretty big one actually, with the line between invention and not reliability. What's the word? When you respect the truth, basically.
Yep.
Because there has to be a point where you really feel like you're creating something that's yours, and you're in control of it. That you're not letting the real facts guide the drama, guide the story, guide the movie. Because otherwise, if those facts are not interesting and you're just putting them in there because they happened, then you end up with something quite dry a lot of the time. So you just have to be very selective, and you have to be very free to make choices, and to live with them.
Definitely. Ridley is a very visionary filmmaker. He's someone that I've admired my whole career. What were those initial meetings like for you with him, and what was he like to work with?
Well, he's an amazing man. First of all, he's got more energy than anyone I know, and he truly loves making films. And he's a painter, so a lot of his storyboarding is exceptional. And he storyboards every scene, and he goes to the crew members, to the heads of department with these incredibly defined, detailed storyboards, and everybody knows what the frame is going to be. So on that level, watching him work like that was amazing. And then it's funny because obviously I was intimidated at the beginning. I was working with one of my heroes. I was working with somebody who really formed my passion for filmmaking. But then I think what happens is you leave all that behind, and it's like, two musicians playing together. Of course, he's the master musician and I'm the apprentice. But you just feel like, you're talking shop, and you're talking character and action and dialogue, and you're really kind of getting into the details of it, and you forget who you're talking to. Every now and again, I would be reminded. There were definitely moments, especially when he starts talking about, he gets into the anecdotes and he starts talking about, when he got a phone call from Stanley Kubrick for Blade Runner because he wanted to use the opening from The Shining and, all of this stuff. I mean, you're like, oh my God, I'm sitting with, an icon, a legend.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he's a wonderful person, really. I mean, not for the most part, always.
We mentioned before about tackling a script that other people had tackled and hadn't been able to achieve. What was that moment like when you handed in your completed script to Ridley? Was there nerves there then? And how many rewrites did you go through before you were happy with your finished script?
Well, when I sent the script in, Ridley had read the treatment that I wrote, which was about 25 pages long, and it was very detailed, and it went through the whole story as I was going to write it in the screenplay. And I remember he called me right before Christmas, and he said, I just wanted to wish you luck as you write the screenplay. I think you're on the right track. I think this could be very cool. This could be really good. And for me, that phone call in itself was like winning an Oscar, right? I was like, oh my God, I fucking got a phone call from Ridley Scott. I could shit the bed right now and still be happy. So that phone call, it was like pouring gasoline on my fire, because then I was like, okay, he's there. Like, he's reading what I write. So then I wrote the script, and 3 weeks went by after I sent it to the company. I sent it to his wife, Janina. 3 weeks went by, and I thought, honestly, I was like, okay, like, that's it. I'm moving on. It's, nothing's happening with it. And then I got a phone call from Janina, and she said, Ridley wants to talk to you. And he called me and said, this is fantastic, and I want to direct this, and you should come to Los Angeles tomorrow.
Oh wow!
And then we had a meeting, and but until I was on set, I really didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I had so many close calls with my other projects, and I just really, every time people were like, "Oh my God, cheers, let's celebrate," I was like, "Fuck no!" I'm only celebrating when the movie's done and it's finished and it's getting released. Like, that's what I'm celebrating,
Yeah. So how many rewrites would you say that you went through when you were actually working on the script part after the treatment?
It's hard to tell because there were so many tweaks that were made along the way. I would say, as crazy as it sounds, I think there must be about 45, 50 versions of the script.
Yep.
And some of them are very similar. Some of them are actually not massively different, but there's scenes removed and there's new scenes and things cut out. But if you read the first draft and you read the shooting script, I think the most noticeable differences would be the voiceover. I had a whole voiceover through the script that was very femme fatale, very film noir.
Yep.
And it was also really funny because she's commenting on everything, and you kind of get a better sense of her sense of humor and how she sees these people. And then the other big difference, I think, was the ad libs, because some of the lines, some of Jared's lines, Paolo's lines, were not in the script, or even the Father Son House of Gucci. Some of the things I wrote were cut. Some of it was added. So it was a very sort of constantly shifting thing, and but I'd say about 40 drafts.
Okay. So, Roberto, we are running out of time very, very quickly, but I had one quick question I wanted to ask. You mentioned about celebrating the film happening. How did you feel when you were hearing all of the announcements about the cast with Al Pacino, Lady Gaga, Adam Driver? How did that make you feel?
Amazing. Not just because it was becoming more real, but also because these are amazing actors. I mean, they're the best actors around. And I wrote the movie with Lady Gaga in mind. She was the only person that came to me as I was writing Patrizia. So to have her be in the movie felt incredibly gratifying and quite cosmic. And then Adam, I think Adam is probably the most talented actor under 40.
Yeah.
At least in the top three. And funnily enough, he was in a bunch of short films that my friends made in New York at Columbia when he was studying at Juilliard.
Yep.
And I remember seeing him in all these short films, and I mentioned it to him when we met, and he was very, very amused that somebody had seen his early work. I think maybe amused and a little embarrassed. I think he's great in everything, but it's like somebody digging up your old childhood pictures.
Yeah.
And then Pacino is Pacino, and it was like meeting the Pope. I think out of everybody, I have to say, obviously Ridley from a filmmaking perspective, but having Al Pacino play one of my characters will always be, no matter what happens next, will always be a pinnacle for me personally.
Definitely.